Be honest for a moment. Have you ever felt like you're falling behind? Like everyone around you is moving forward, and you're still in the same place? You see people making progress, reaching goals, building something, stepping into opportunities, and you can't help but notice it, even if you don't say it out loud. You feel it, that quiet question, why not me? You've been trying, you've been patient, you've been waiting for something to open, but instead, it feels like things are slower for you, delayed, paused, and the longer it lasts, the harder it becomes not to compare, not to wonder if you missed something, if you took a wrong step, if you're somehow behind where you're supposed to be. But what if you're not behind at all? What if the reason things feel slower is not because you're being left out, but because something is being set up differently for you? Stay here, because if you've been feeling this, you might be seeing your situation completely wrong. The first thing you need to understand is this: feeling behind doesn't always mean you are behind. But I know that's not how it feels. Because when you look around, everything seems to be moving. People are progressing. Opportunities are appearing. Things are happening for others in ways that feel clear and visible. And then there's you, still waiting, still trying, still wondering when something will shift. And the longer that contrast stays in front of you, the more it starts to affect how you see yourself. You don't just notice others moving forward, but you begin to measure yourself against it, quietly, internally, without even realizing it. You start asking questions like, am I doing something wrong? Did I miss my moment? Why does it feel slower for me? And those questions don't come from nowhere. They come from comparison, from looking outward and trying to make sense of your own timing through someone else's progress. But here's the part that's easy to miss. You're comparing visible outcomes to an unseen process. You're measuring where someone is now against where you currently feel, without seeing what led them there, without knowing what's happening behind your own situation. And that's where the confusion begins, because progress doesn't always look like movement. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Sometimes it looks like waiting. Sometimes it feels like nothing is happening at all. But that doesn't mean nothing is happening. It just means you can't see it yet. And that's what makes this so difficult. Because when progress is visible, it's easy to trust. You can see it. You can measure it. You can point to something and say, this is moving forward. But when progress is hidden, it feels like nothing is happening. Even when something is, you don't get clear signs. You don't get obvious results. You don't get that same sense of confirmation. So your mind starts to fill in the gaps. It starts to assume that the absence of visible progress means the absence of progress altogether. And that's where doubt begins. Not because something is wrong, but because you can't see what's right. You begin to question your timing, your direction, your decisions. You start wondering if you should be doing something different, moving faster, trying harder, changing course completely. But what if the reason things aren't moving the way you expected is not because you're off track, but because your process is different? Because not everything is meant to happen quickly. Not everything is meant to be visible right away. Some things take time, because they're being built in a way that can't be rushed. And when that's happening, it doesn't always look like progress. It looks like delay. But delay and preparation can look exactly the same until the moment everything shifts. And that's the part no one really talks about. The in-between. The space where nothing seems to be happening, but everything is actually being formed. It's not exciting. It's not visible. It doesn't give you anything to show or explain. And because of that, it's easy to misinterpret. You start to think this phase means you're stuck, that you're not progressing, that somehow you've been left out of what's happening around you. But what you're in right now is not absence. It's development, just not the kind you can measure yet. Because real preparation doesn't always happen in public. It happens in private, in your thinking, in your perspective, in the way you handle things when no one else is watching, in the way you respond when nothing is forcing you to. You may not see results, but something in you is changing, quietly, subtly, consistently. And those changes matter more than you realize. Because what you're becoming determines what you'll be able to handle later. And if everything moved quickly, before you were ready, it wouldn't feel like progress. It would feel overwhelming. So this phase, as slow and unclear as it feels, has a purpose. Not to hold you back, but to build something in you that you can't skip. And that's why your timing feels different. Not wrong, different. Because what's being built in you requires a different pace, a slower one, a quieter one that doesn't rely on constant external movement to prove that something is happening. And that's hard to accept, because everything around you is telling a different story. Fast progress, visible success, clear results. And when you don't see that in your own life, it's easy to assume you're falling behind. But you're not behind. You're just not on the same timeline, and you were never meant to be. Because your process is connected to something specific, something that requires preparation before it can fully appear. And preparation doesn't always look impressive, doesn't always feel productive. Sometimes it feels like waiting, like being overlooked, like being in a place where nothing is changing. But what you don't see is this. Things are being aligned in ways you can't measure yet, not just around you, but within you. Your mindset, your strength, your awareness, your ability to handle what's coming next. All of that is being shaped right now, quietly, without attention, without recognition. And that's why this phase feels so confusing. Because you're expecting movement, but you're actually in formation. And this is where your perspective has to shift. Because as long as you keep seeing this as being behind, it will continue to feel frustrating, heavy, unfair. But the moment you begin to see it as preparation, something changes, not outside of you yet, but inside. You stop measuring your life against someone else's timeline. You stop using visible results as your only definition of progress. You start recognizing that what's happening in you matters just as much as what's happening around you. And that changes how you wait, because now, you're not just waiting for something to happen, you're allowing something to be built. You begin to notice things you didn't notice before. How your thinking has shifted, how your patience has grown, how you're handling situations differently than you used to. Those aren't small things. Those are signs, not the kind that show up publicly, but the kind that prepare you internally. And internal preparation always comes before external movement. Always. Because if the outside changes before the inside is ready, it doesn't last. It doesn't hold. It doesn't stay. So what you're experiencing right now, is not being overlooked. It's being positioned. Positioned in a way that requires time, in a way that requires depth, in a way that requires you to become ready, not just arrive quickly. And the more you understand that, the less this season feels like delay, and the more it starts to feel like purpose. And once you start to see it that way, the pressure begins to lift. Not all at once, but gradually. Because you're no longer trying to rush your way out of this phase. You're no longer forcing movement just to feel like you're keeping up. You're no longer comparing every step you take to where someone else already is. You're simply focusing on what's being built in you. And that changes how you move. You become more steady, more grounded, less reactive. You stop chasing things just because they look like progress. You stop questioning yourself every time something doesn't happen immediately. Because now, you understand something deeper, that what's being formed in you right now is not random. It's intentional. And intention takes time. You don't rush something that's meant to last. You don't skip steps that are meant to strengthen you. You don't force outcomes that require preparation. And when you stop trying to rush it, you begin to notice something else. You're not as anxious. You're not as restless. You're not carrying that constant feeling of being behind, because you're no longer measuring your life by speed. You're understanding it by purpose. And purpose always moves at the pace it needs to. And the more you stay in that understanding, the more something inside you settles. You're no longer trying to prove that you're moving. You're no longer looking for constant validation that things are happening. You're simply continuing with what's in front of you. And that kind of steadiness is what prepares you for what's next. Because when things do begin to shift, and they will, you won't be reacting out of pressure. You won't be trying to catch up. You won't be overwhelmed by sudden movement. You'll be ready. Ready in a way that only comes from going through this phase. From being shaped in ways no one else saw. From learning patience when nothing seemed to be changing. From trusting the process, even when you couldn't fully understand it. And that kind of readiness is different. It's not rushed. It's not fragile. It's stable. And when things finally open up, you'll recognize it. Not because it feels fast, but because it feels right. Because everything that was being built in you will match what's now being placed in front of you. And that's when it will make sense. Why things didn't happen earlier. Why it felt slower. Why it felt like you were being left behind. You weren't being left behind. You were being prepared for something you couldn't have handled before. So now, before you move on from this moment, just pause, not to think harder, not to question where you are, but to see it differently, because what you've been calling delay was never delay. What you've been calling being behind was never behind. It was preparation, quiet, unseen, unmeasured, but real. And now that you see it, you don't have to carry that same pressure anymore. You don't have to compare. You don't have to rush. You don't have to force something to happen just to feel like you're moving. You can stay where you are with a different understanding that this phase has a purpose. And that purpose is shaping you for what's next. So instead of asking, why am I behind? Start asking, what is being built in me right now? Because the answer to that question will change everything. And when the moment comes, when things finally begin to move, you'll see it clearly. You are never behind. You are being positioned.